guys! Okay, so today we're at GSM, Greenwich Sports Medicine, and we have Mike here who's going to talk us through the basics of a back squat, a front squat, an RDL, and a hip thrust. So we're going to go through the basics and keep watching.
Okay, so the first thing I look for is squat is a hip extension, right? So when we're squatting, we want to make sure we're using our hip extensors. The first movement needs to stem from the hips and from the glutes. So the best way that I like to kind of train that or to learn that movement pattern, although it's a little awkward, is facing the wall. So come over here towards the wall. Toes right up against the wall with our head just like this and our arms up here. And what we're working on is sticking our butt back into a little bit of a hip hinge or a squat. The goal is, and the reason why we're facing the wall, is to force hip extension, because if I don't and I flex forward, I'm going to jam my head into the wall. So it forces us to really use the glutes and the hamstrings to start that movement pattern. So if anybody's having trouble kind of getting that first initial movement, I always say get to the wall, face the wall, train your body to move through the hip, and then add load. The most important thing is that you move well first, then move often with load. So I never load up weights on a squat or a deadlift or any exercise before we can move really well. So this is a good way to start moving well, and then we can add the load. Yeah, hip width stance is usually the best way. If your hips are a little tight, you might need to kind of open it up. And there's different variations of squats too. We're going to just go over a traditional squat. So you could do a sumo squat, which might be a little wider. You could do a narrower stance squat. You could do a squat with your toes are kind of pushed out a little bit. But for now, we're going to go hip width apart. And all you're going to do here is you're going to stick your butt back and you're going to hip hinge. So you're going to start in a little bit of a squat. This forces the butt to go back, the hips to extend, so you're not hitting the wall with your face. So try that a few times, Mari. Good, so this is a movement prep. Always prep movements before you actually give it load. And now she's really extending through the hip. You're obviously not going to be able to go down that far, and that's totally fine. We're training the brain to move this way. And there's very little cues that I'm giving here because the wall does all the work. So I'm a big fan of using the environment or using your surroundings as equipment and as tools, especially if you don't have anybody to spot you or to kind of work out with. So it's a good way. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is a back squat, right? We don't have a rack here, but you probably wanna start in a rack position if you have it. If not, a spotter or somebody that can hand you the bar and put it on your back is probably your best bet.
Or a Smith machine.
Or a Smith machine, exactly. So we're going to put this over here. She's going to rack it like that. Again, let's start with the hip width stance. Since we just trained it and we prepped it against the wall, we're going to stay with that same movement. Now, she's going to start always bracing the core, right? So always kind of keeping a good strong base as she kicks her hips out into hip extension, which is the beginning of the squat. And then she's going to come out of the hole. What's important is a few things. One is that hip extension. The other one is as you stand up, you want to extend your butt up towards the ceiling. A lot of times I see people get out of the hole and they're jamming their quads and coming up through the quad. The squat is a hip extension exercise. If you don't feel it in the hip extensors, your hamstrings and your glutes, you're not squatting properly.
Yeah.
So when you get in the hole, when you get out of it, you're lifting your butt up towards the ceiling. That will engage the posterior chain of the back muscles. Try it again. Better. And always driving through the heels. You never want to really drive through the toes because you'll lose the tension on the posterior muscles that we're trying to fire here. And now what I want you to do is go down and hold for a second, Mari. Right there. Stop it right there. What's important, Jess, come around here for a sec, is that we keep a nice neutral spine. What happens is, you can stand for a second, just give it a rest, is we get what's called a butt wink. A lot of times people will squat all the way down, go back down, and they'll lose that neutral spine and it will round. That's not so great for your low back. So what I like to do, and she's doing a great job right here, is keep this nice and neutral. And now when you come out of the hole, it's like you're lifting your butt up. Beautiful. Do you feel that in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah, do it again. That's really good. Neutral spine, lift the butt up, use those posterior muscles to fire that weight up through the heels. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to have Mari demonstrate a front squat position here, and then we can kind of go over it as necessary. All right, try 5 front squats. So actually, that was really good. That was really good form. There's 2 ways to do a front squat, right? One is the way you did it, kind of like out on a shelf.
Yeah.
Right, and the other one is getting your hands up under the squat. Now, the position of the bar changes the angle of the torso. So if I'm in a front rack position, either here or here, my torso is going to be a little bit more upright, like you were, and that looked good. You always need to move well before you load any exercise.
Yeah.
And sometimes before you even do some of these exercises, you need to have the adequate mobility necessary to do that. Front squat is one of those things where it takes time to master the technique.
Do you think that a front squat with a dumbbell is good practice?
Yeah, it's great practice. And that would be holding the weight up just like this here. Good, strong base, shoulders back, right? So you always want to keep them back. Drop the hips down, head straight, and then driving through the hole. You want to do everything you can to get out of this position and stay extended and strong.
Yeah. So this is a good alternative to front squatting.
This is an excellent alternative, and this is what I would recommend for somebody who's just starting to front squat. Yeah, and I want you to lift that chest up, like get nice and proud here. Beautiful. Really good. And this feels a little bit easier, right?
Yeah.
But you still have weight, and you can load it up here because your position is way safer. So load up more weight, challenge yourself a little bit more, and there's less tension on the wrist. The other way I do that, similar to an RDL, is if we turn the other way and our butt is facing the wall, we're like 2 feet from the wall, so our butt can touch the wall. We're going to basically stick our butt right back there. That forces us to extend the hip, and then we're going to pull our butt forward. It's important to engage the core, so you're drawing in, right? And then sticking your butt back, and then driving your heels down as you lift your butt forward.
Yeah.
That will engage the posterior chain. The RDL needs to be a hamstring, glute, posterior chain, or backside muscle exercise. If you're feeling this in the low back, you're not doing it correctly. If you're feeling it in the glutes and the hamstrings and your core is engaged, then you're probably doing it efficiently. Yeah?
That
You
good?
can go a little bit farther.
Further?
Yeah. So core engaged, and you're going to stick your butt to the wall to a point where your butt hits the wall. That's your end point, and then you're going to squeeze and come all the way up. So your head, Mari, that was really good. Your head should be straight.
Okay.
So I like to look at something straight ahead. So that keeps...
Friend.
Drop down a little bit. Drop your chin down a little bit. You want to be straight.
that
Neutral
good?
spine is incredibly important. You should be no rounding down here. That's not good for your low back. So right here, Mari's in great position. She's extending to the hip. Her back's nice and flat. And now drive the hips forward. Good. Try it again. So again, we want this to be nice and flat. There's no rounding, just like we did when we back squatted. And now you're extending to the hip. Do you feel like a little pull when you go down?
Yeah.
In the back? Beautiful. Try one more. And we're exhaling as we exert force, right? So we're inhaling down, we're exhaling through the motion.
Yeah.
Perfect. Mari's moving well. She's moving through the hip, so we're going to add some load. Right? So we're always engaging the core, Mari. And then we're going to extend the hip, and we're going to come down. Remember, we're keeping a nice neutral spine in here, and then pulling the hips forward. Again, just like the squat, you should feel it in the back muscles, right? So in the glute and the hamstring, not the low back. Core is engaged, and then you're firing the weight up towards the ceiling. Inhale down, exhale up. What's important is that the hip initiates the movement, not the weight and not the back. So it's not letting, the bar is not pulling you down, you're bringing the bar down through your hip. That's really important. You don't want to flex your spine here. And that's what a lot of people do, and that's why you feel it in your back if you're doing that at home. The bar should be touching your body at all times. A lot of times when I deadlift, I wear pants or I wear something on my shins because you might irritate your shins, and that's a good thing. The bar should not be coming forward. That, especially with load, even if you're using your glutes, that puts a lot of stress on the low back.
Yeah.
So you want to keep that bar attached to your body at all times. Inhale down. That looks good. Her spine is straight. Head position is important too. She's doing a great job keeping her eyes pinned on one location. A lot of times I see patients and clients lift their chin up as they go down, and that extends the whole back. We want neutral spines here. Beautiful. Do you feel that in the glutes and the hamstrings?
Yeah, big time.
But you want to make sure that you have all the tools before you get with weight. And Mari's doing a great job. We've been practicing this, and this isn't something that she got off the bat. You've been working on it and doing a great job.
Yeah, Mike has really helped me with my form. I used to drop the bar way too low and I wasn't feeling it in the right places. So having the correct form is key to feeling it in the correct muscle groups.
So just like we've been talking about with all the other exercises, the squat and the Romanian deadlift, this is a hip extension exercise, a great tool to help develop the glutes and the hamstring strength. So Mari's going to demonstrate here. Her arms are going to be out nice and wide. Core is always engaged. Now, feet are about hip width apart, and you can go wider, you can play with it depending on the band. The band is there for added extra resistance to get those glutes to turn on. Sometimes with the band, if you just drive your knees out, that will turn on your glutes. She's going to keep the tension on the band, driving your knees out as she lifts up. Hold it right there. The force needs to come from the heels, right? So she's driving her heels down as she lifts her butt up. Beautiful. And then she's squeezing her glutes and coming down slowly. And exhaling as she drives up. This, in this position, is a squat. So basically what she's doing here is a squat in a different plane of motion, right? So she's extending the hip and coming up out of the hole, just like you would do in a squat. You don't want to have a forward head and you don't want to extend. You want to find something to look at, and usually if you just keep your eyes on that, you're in good position. As far as the knees go, I like 90 degrees, right? And you can play with the angles. Doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong, but for beginner purposes, I like to finish so you're straight, and that's an easy thing to kind of figure out. So she's straight along here, and she's 90 degrees. Bring your feet forward a little bit. Nice. In that position there. So should we get in that position? And I like to put a towel or something soft on her hips so it's not, not too painful. And if you can handle it, then you don't really need anything. And basically you want to put the barbell above the hip. So you want it to be up a little bit higher. Not on your femur, above your hip. Right there. We're extending the hip. So we're driving the hips up towards the ceiling and pushing the heels down. So it's a hip dominant motion. The theme of today is hip dominant motion, which is extremely important. Not low back, not knees. And we can either do the Smith machine or we could do the dumbbell. The dumbbell she could take herself, place it in the same spot, add some load, and then come up. Again, we want to move well before we add load. And if you are going to add load, I like to do the endurance first. So lighter load, maybe 15 reps or 20 reps or so in a lighter load. Once you have that pattern down, then you can increase the weight and decrease the reps.